Well, let's kick it off with this Buttergate. So last episode we talked about Buttergate, as it's come to known, with this idea that the butter is harder than it was, and there may be palmalic acids, as you would refer to them, in the product. So there's a lot has happened between the last podcast episode and this one. At a high level, elevate this discussion to the strategy and policy perspective, and your thoughts on that from your perspective about what just happened and what implications or broader meaning it has in our food and our culture and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, Michael, I always start with the consumer. What's going on in people's homes when they buy products, and we still don't know for sure whether or not the characteristics of dairy products have changed. Of course, the Dairy Farmers of Canada have denied that things have changed, but they don't even have evidence to demonstrate that they haven't not changed. And that's really
Right.
part of the debate, right? The science is where now a lot of people are pointing fingers at people asking for the ban or changes and asking them, where's the science? Well, it goes both ways, really. There's lack of science. But
That's one thing. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up. I mean, in our last episode, I was listening to it over again, and what came out is this call for more research, right? This call for, could this be the case? We should invest in more research rather than definitives, right?
There's a lot of research being done, but not the right research.
Okay.
And there's not that connection from both ends of the food continuum, farm gate and plate. There's a lot of great work being done in animal science and plant science. There's some work being done in food science, but there's no connection. And that's really the problem. So some of the practices that are on farms are approved, legal, things are great, but there's no consideration as to what may happen to the quality of food products at retail. And that's why food processors, dairy processors, and Mark Taylor and Lactalis are part of that group, have asked for the ban 24 hours before it actually happened. And I can understand why. There were a lot of unknowns. But again, going back to the consumer, we actually have one of our field houses, cattle. They actually surveyed 8,704 Canadians over the weekend from February 27th to February 28th, asking them whether or not they saw any difference in the hardness and spreadability of their butter. So here's the answer. 43.1% of Canadians who consume butter regularly, so twice or more a week, have seen a difference in hardness and spreadability. But here's the kicker that I thought was really interesting. Of that 43.1%, 76.2% has never heard of Buttergate, which means that they weren't necessarily influenced by what we saw. They were asked for the first time and said, well, yeah, since August 2020, in the middle of summer, they have seen a difference at a certain level. So 2 different levels. And so to me, when it comes to quality, that's a pretty high number. I mean, I would be certainly concerned. And going back to August of last year, when the British Columbia Dairy Marketing Board issued a memo in October referring to some problems in August of 2020, dairy farmers knew there were some quality issues, but they opted to not do anything. So the first memo we got from the Dairy Farmers of Canada 2 weeks ago was, we don't see anything wrong, to February 19th when they decided to strike a committee because they think there's something wrong. And on February 25th, because, I mean, Buttergate was all over the world, they had no other choice. They had no other choice but to actually stop everything. And I think it was absolutely the right decision to make.
Well, I guess in hindsight, the right outcome was, let's understand what's happening, let's connect the dots, and let's make sure protect the brand, milk, protect the integrity of that brand. It's so important. Consumers don't understand the market dynamics of. I barely understand them, let alone consumers. But they do know one thing: is they think Canadian milk and dairy products are wholesome and good to eat, and any nick in that perception is something that needs to be addressed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The concern that I have coming out of last week was that there is an investigation that is going to happen, but let's not kid ourselves. It is an investigation led by a lobby group regulating itself.
Right.
So this is important, and nobody's talking about this, but I have no idea what the outcome is going to be. The second concern that I have is that right now, when you look around, everyone is weaponizing science based on their own narrative. They're out there, and I would say that a lot of dairy farmers are doing that right now, unfortunately, because some dairy farmers have come to me saying, Sylvain, there's something wrong. We you're right. There's something that we need to do. Absolutely. I was actually on the debate last night with dairy farmers. We had over 400 dairy farmers listening in live on Facebook, debating on Buttergate. It was really great. It was because it allowed people to vent. It allowed people to talk about, what the science is. And there's like I said, there's lots of science, but people are treating science like a buffet. Oh, this article actually fits my narrative. I'm going to use it and post it on Twitter. Oh, that article fits well with what I think is going on, so I'll post it on Facebook. There's a lot of that going on, and science is not like that at all. Science is really a collection of several studies together. It's a meta-analysis that we need from different disciplines, a multidisciplinary approach. Again, lots of great work being done in dairy science and genetics, in animal science as well. But that lack of connection is costing dearly to the dairy industry right now. Weaponizing science is just not helpful. It's important to keep an open mind in all this. And I think, based on some of the message I'm getting, I'm either getting criticism, or I'm getting farmers and people in the industry saying, I think we're onto something, and this is not on anymore. The way we evaluate how we market products is no longer applicable. We have to change because the consumer has changed. Palm oil, or a derivative of palm oil, whatever you want to call it, it's still from the same plant. And a lot of people have issues with that. And it's about respect and consumer confidence. And no food companies are immune to that, including dairy.
Well, and I just want to touch on one other thing you brought up, because it's not the first time that science and different parties have been involved. I think of GMOs, for example, as there's a group of people who just won't take GMO products. You see many products that say does not contain GMO. You talk to farmers and say, listen, I couldn't get what I get out of the crops without some sense of modified product. And again, the cherry picking of the science on one side, left, right, or the different feels familiar. And of course, we see it every day with COVID. Maybe we're in this environment of pick your study, pick your science, and pick a side.
In food, when we're talking about moral contracts or social contracts in food, whether it's genetic engineering or, in this case, animal feed practices, and to be honest, this Buttergate issue reminds me a lot of mad cow. In 2003, when ruminant to ruminant feed was the question. How we fed cattle, essentially, and cattle producers. A lot of cattle producers didn't see a problem. They were doing it for years, but clearly there was a problem because the science evolved. As soon as you start hearing things like, "Oh, this is misinformation. Oh, you're misleading people. Oh, there's no science to what you're saying," that's a sign that you're dealing with a breach moral contract or breach social contract. And there's a lot going on right now, but I would say that there was a lot last week, not as much this week. And like I said, the concern that I have right now is that we're giving the dairy farmers of Canada the duty and the responsibility to investigate itself. And I'm hoping that they're going to be supported by some political leadership, and I would include dairy processors as well.
All right. Well, listen, let's leave it there. I don't think it's the last we'll talk about it.
No.
I think
I never would have thought that would have been I would have been in say Australia or Britain or
right.
I say explaining to them the regime that we have in Canada with supply management, because they from their perspective they don't necessarily understand why Buttergate is Buttergate.
Right.
But when you start explaining to them that really, in the end, consumers are endorsing a government sanctioned quota system, we protect our farmers, we compensate our farmers, we pay more for butter, generally speaking. In return, all we expect is quality, and if that expectation is compromised one way or another, it's a problem.
Right. Yeah, it certainly went around the world, and I don't think, as I said, I don't think it's done. So let's come back to it another episode as the story evolves, and as the principles behind it are probably kind of run through this podcast as well. As long as we've touched on, and as long as we'll do as we go move as we in the future.
Yeah, exactly.